I want to thank Tom, not only for the envelope, but for the introduction. I've come to know Tom as prescient, panoptic, a stellar person, affable, amicable, a leader, a vigorous person. Tom, I can't keep reading this stuff you've written. I've got to get on with my presentation. An earlier technique was going to be not to have any chairs, so I could at least say there was a standing ovation, but I got overruled. And somewhat seriously, I congratulate Rotarians for being part of bucking a trend of being alone and not joining things and being in your own cocoon, which some of you know my son has just written a book about. And a service club or any organization that tries to do some good, I'm all for and congratulate you for your efforts. And I'm also reminded of the demographic group because I was rifling through the drawer here and I found numerous pairs of glasses. So obviously you have older speakers. Okay, I call this presentation Stop the Leaderless Yo-Yo Time. Now, first of all, yo-yo time stands for you're on your own. And I appreciate that there are people who are saying that they are doing good works in preparing for the FIFA World Cup. And, you know, these may be the same people who prepared for the pandemic or for SARS or for, they're probably not the ones who prepared for the Spanish flu. But, you know, we've had these people beavering away for many, many years, and I am questioning the result, and I'm sorry. But the other thing is leaderless. And I'm going to make a couple of references to what a good leader would do in the making of an excellent plan, and see if you have a tendency to agree with me. Now, safety has been a lifelong interest of mine. This is a clip from my time at CBC, which none of you are young enough to remember, but I spent a lot of my youth on CBC television. Here's an early version of a safety interview. That's actually my home in Regina. That's a bona fide beaver coat, trapped in northern Saskatchewan, and that's a 73 Duster.
I'm going skiing. I'm going to be about 125, 50 miles away from Regina, and one of the things that might happen to me is I might get stranded on the road. In the past 2 years, 40 people have died of exposure or related causes in Saskatchewan. And most of those deaths are unnecessary because all you need to do is take a few things along with you in the car. And to tell me what to take along is Jim Eaton from EMO. What have you got in the bag, Jim?
Well, the first thing you should have, Al, is a shovel just in case you get stuck in the snowbank.
I'll take that.
Instead of going out and buy a survival kit, it's a good idea just to go down to the basement and get some of your old clothes and and old things that you have down there. And Canasorbate is very important if your gas line freezes up.
You put that in the gas tank, too?
That's right.
Okay.
And I have a little stove that runs on...
Now, you're all going to get a copy of that. It's about 4 or 5 minutes long, and I think it's pretty good advice. It's kind of ancient advice. I still have that toupee, by the way, as you can see. But I'm not dyeing it dark brown anymore. This is my natural color. As I was doing my research for a master's in urban planning, which you have one of the books that I did during that time in front of you, I had done this 15 years after I did a degree in risk, crisis, and disaster management at the only university in the world that offers a full graduate program in that. So I kind of combined the two disciplines, crisis management, urban planning. And as I was reading into this, I saw a book by Matthew Stein, and he coined the phrase yo-yo time, and now I've stolen from it. You know, good artists borrow, great artists steal. And then there was Creek Stewart, who had a book advising to have rubber tubing in your car for emergencies. You can provide your own tourniquet if you are injured, and you can also siphon gasoline. And at that point, I said, that's enough. I've had it with this. I pay my taxes, you pay your taxes. I wish you paid my taxes, but that's another matter. And why are we on our own? Why are we supposed to be doing minor operations on ourselves and tourniquets and splints and what have you, because the system will not adequately deal with an emergency? I became outraged. My history is as a local and network reporter with the CBC in Canada and some private stations and the RKO Radio Network in the U.S. And I did 2020 News, which was screaming the end of the world to people every 20 minutes. And I noticed that really poor performance by most people I interviewed. They sounded either guilty or stupid. Well, I was a late bloomer. They weren't. They were simply nervous. They didn't know how long 5 minutes was. They didn't know what the camera angles might be in a TV studio. So I thought there would be a great business preparing people for radio, TV, and print interviews. There was. It took off like gangbusters. Then the Exxon Valdez oil spill happened. I know I look too young, but you know it's true. And that got me into the crisis management business, debriefing responders that I'd trained to go there, writing and reading crisis plans, having simulations and so on. And that's been kind of it for the next decades, half general training and communications advice and half crisis response. I've been on military war games, did an earthquake simulation in Tokyo, and for the International Atomic Energy Agency, worked in these different cities, and as Tom said, work on 5 continents. So Ounce of Prevention was the book that arose out of the Risk, Crisis, and Disaster Management Studies, Safer Cities of the Future out of Urban Planning. Did something on cybersecurity, which was sort of out of date the minute it was published, but it was kind of interesting research. I have views on AI, which I will tell you about. I'm not so much worried about AI as I am IA. AI, of course, is artificial intelligence. IA is intelligence absent, and I think that is really the predominant problem. During the pandemic, did this book, Emergency on Hospital Evacuation and Masks and Wearing 2 masks and no masks and so on, and did some work with Johns Hopkins epidemiologists on that. Et c'est ma livre en français, Mieux vaut prévenir. So, product labeling. I'm going to make some critical comments here. The internet and city websites can be out of date the same day that they are published. So some of my observations may be. The fact that they exist is indictment enough. They don't have to have kept them forever. I worked in city government. I recognize the chain of command. I recognize people are busy. The fire chief is busy, the police chief is busy, the mayor is busy, everybody's busy, and now emergency managers are busy. They are so busy they can't do a good job at what their job is. The emerging occupation of emergency management has ex-police officers, ex-firefighters, ex-military, and now some academics from everything from leading universities to community colleges with certificate programs. So it's quite an asymmetrical thing. It's kind of like going into the hospital and not knowing whether you're going to get a dentist, a surgeon, a pharmacist, a massage therapist, but you're going to get somebody. Okay. Look at the size of plans. I mean, I think right here, right now, this tells us no one is going to read a plan that is 680 pages long or 550 pages. They are hundreds and hundreds of pages. Now, what is in those pages? The kind of padding that you would find in a college essay. You know, you had to write 10,000 words, so somebody's writing 10,000 words on the one hand, on the other hand, and in as much as, and theretofore, and what have you. There are also lists of people, probably long dead, who contributed to the plan writing so that everybody gets honorable mention. There are definitions of things. You will see as we go through this, if you can stand it, what is in some of these plans. The date of plans. Are there any lawyers in the room? Recovering lawyers, defrocked lawyers, You would confirm if you were here, and I grant you don't want to admit that you're a lawyer, but it is imperative to know that the statutes in most provinces require urban emergency plans to be 1, written, 2, tested every 2 years. Well, here's one that's 19 years old. And when I see a 19-year-old plan with no revisions in it, I figured it hasn't been tested. When I see references to fax machines, no references to cell phones, I mean, I figure it's an old plan. Look at how old these are. Unbelievable. Here are some of the other problems. Pop-down menus, pop-up menus. Small text that you can't read, probably violating the Persons with Disability Acts. The text goes off the page. There are maps with no street names. Can you imagine how helpful that is? You know, here's a map. Unexplained terminology. Turn around, don't drown. I thought that meant if there's a tsunami, you turn around and let the water hit you in the back. But no, it means get out of the danger area. In Calgary and St. Catharines, they refer to things that are defined in the annex, but the annex is hidden. In Mississauga, their plan forms Schedule A to the current bylaw, see Appendix X. The plan's appendices are confidential, but appendices do not form part of the plan. Any reference to an appendix within the emergency plan is solely for the assistance of the users of the manual. Now, if you were the user of the manual, wouldn't that be of great assistance? I'm reminded of what Attorney General Bobby Kennedy said during the Cuban Missile Crisis. Canada was willing to provide all possible assistance short of any actual help. Now, something is not right, folks. Something is gone wrong right here in River City. A variance of approaches within Ontario and a lack of standardized tools, there's no single province-wide system to secure effective coordination. And this is a frank statement in Guelph's emergency plan. No automatic call for the cavalry in Hamilton. Now, can you imagine if anyone else in any profession or occupation, fire, police, military, EMS, hospital, emergency room, teachers, nurses, garbage collectors, yoga instructors, people who do your colors or your aura, anyone who said, well, you know, we can't help, we don't have any plan, it's asymmetrical, you get whatever you get. This is an absolute indictment written in plain black and white in the plans of these cities. Interoperability was an issue, 25 years ago, 9/11. The emergency responders couldn't talk to each other, radio frequencies and so on. Interoperability also means terminology, not just technology. And there is a presidential directive signed by President Obama to fix interoperability. It has not been fixed. Weapons of mass destruction are defined in 2 cities as hand grenades. In most people's minds, this would be nuclear, biological, or chemical. So if you're on an emergency frequency saying we've got some weapons of mass destruction here, people are going to get probably the wrong impression. You know, from the cop shows, the 10 code, you know, what's your 1020 means where are you? 10-4, over and out, that means, you know, okay, goodbye. The 10 code is different in different jurisdictions. So can you just imagine the problem, the gibberish that could ensue because of different meanings of the 10 code? There are color coding varieties in the plans, you'll see. Diagrams are incoherent and levels of crises vary. Wait a minute, I think we have some news here. This reminds me of my old newscasting days. Stand by. We're now going live to a news conference in Brisbane, Australia. Journalists have assembled to question an emergency management official on that city's state of readiness. It's not known at this time if Brisbane is facing an urban emergency, but that will be the subject of the news conference. As background, Brisbane has several levels of activation called stand down and another called stand up, followed by lean forward. The top level is alert and is characterized by a heightened level of vigilance. Lean forward means operational state, a heightened level of situational awareness, operational readiness. Stand up means resources are mobilized, personnel are activated, and operational activities are commenced. Stand down means back to normal. There you are. You can see those levels again on your screen: alert, lean forward, stand up, and stand down. And now we join the news conference live and in progress from the Emergency Operations Center in Brisbane, Australia. Emergency official. Ladies and gentlemen of the press, are there any questions? Journalist. Has the city activated its response? Emergency official. We always have a level of activation. Journalist. Well, I think the public would want to know what level we're at now. Official. Well, right now we're back to normal. Journalist. Well, since you're an emergency responder, does normal mean you're mobilized and ready to go? Oh no, that would mean stand up. Journalist. Well, isn't that stand by? Official. Well, no, there's no such thing, really. We stand up and stand down, but we don't stand by. We do a little stand by, but that's a subcategory of lean forward. You might be thinking of alert. A journalist, well, if you're on alert, doesn't that mean you're mobilized? Oh, no. That's stand up, as I just said. Alert refers to heightened vigilance and monitoring the situation. But if you're on alert, surely you're ready to react to the emergency. Oh, no. I think you mean operational readiness, and that occurs in our lean forward level. And of course, we lean forward after standing up. So with operational readiness, then you and your team would be vigilant, I assume. Oh, no. I think you mean heightened vigilance. That's the state we're in at the alert level. Journalist. So when you mobilize your equipment and people, they're not on alert or vigilant? Oh, no. Heightened vigilance occurs when we're alert. Journalist. So you're not alert when you mobilize equipment? Official. Of course not. Mobilization is a function of the stand-up phase. Journalist. And you're not alert when you're operationally ready? Oh, of course not. Operational readiness is a function of the lean forward phase, at which time I can assure you I nor any of my colleagues are alert. Journalist. So you stand up, lean forward, and become alert. Well, pretty much as the situation warrants, such as it is, in a manner of speaking. Journalist. Isn't stand down a bit of a contradiction? I mean, standing is upright and down is not upright. Official. Look, we use this official terminology in order to provide absolute clarity and safety to the general public. Journalist. Well, I just Googled stand down and it means resign from office. Does this mean the emergency is going so badly that you have to resign? Official. No. Stand down is an expression mainly from the military and meaning to relax after a state of readiness. That means we've done all of our jobs and we'll probably get promotions and raises. Journalist. But doesn't an expression like that make you want to stop up sitting and up get and out walk? Official. No, that would be in the stand up and lean forward phases. Journalist. Look, is Brisbane in an emergency or not? Not anymore. Inventing this terminology is not going to keep people safer, I submit. Now, here are irrelevancies, redundancies, tautology, and the padding of a college essay, a high school essay. Let's not indict colleges. Thunderstorms can occur anywhere in the world at any time of the day. Stop the presses. Self-evacuation. Self-evacuation is defined as evacuation from an area under a person's own arrangements. Notify, and I bet you didn't know this, notify means to inform about a condition, event, or situation. Philadelphia felt it necessary to define notify. Kitchener defines police chief, just in case, anyone has been on a different planet for most of his or her life and doesn't know what a police chief is. Notification is to make known or inform. These are actual words written in black and white on pensionable or billable time by someone. Okay? Gibberish, jargon, or padding. This is one of my favorites from Buffalo. A central focal point of analytical and coordinative planning skills, which could obtain the necessary political leadership and backing when needed, is required to coordinate the program and agencies necessary to bring about a high-quality level of recovery and community development. I'm just thinking of the number of people who could be killed while somebody's reading this and trying to figure out what it means. More padding. Wind, did you know, is the motion of air relevant to the Earth's surface. Now, I would say people who have ever been to the Earth or spent any time on planet Earth might know that already. Winter storms are large storms occurring during the cold winter months. Droughts are extended periods of dry weather. Flooding occurs when rivers, creeks, streams, ditches, or other water bodies receive too much water from rain or snowmelt. And hail is a large frozen raindrop. Actually written by people who should not have access to a keyboard, but that's perhaps another matter. Now, I'm sure many of you have some emergency supplies. You've heard we need to have a go bag or an emergency bag or whatever it's called. Well, there is a differing opinion on whether it should last you 36 hours, 72 hours, or 7 days. There's no uniform definition of this. There are go bags, there are go home bags, because you might be at the office and you're going home and then you're going to go get your go bag and get in the car and go. There are first aid kits, there are car kits. When I did this research, I found exactly, and The secret of my business is academic research. We go on academic, peer-reviewed journal articles to find out what serious researchers who are at least have some oversight. And I grant you the quality of peer-reviewed journal articles has gone down in the last little while, but at least there is oversight. So we found exactly one article in all of the world, English-speaking world, dealing with these go bags. It was from a couple of Brits, and they said, this is ridiculous. If you put the kind of things that are being recommended into a bag, it's going to weigh 75 pounds. Now, I can carry 75 pounds for about 25 steps. And if people are buying my books, I could probably make it 80, 90 steps. But that is a tough call, especially if you have kids or you have people with mobility challenges. It is ridiculous. What you need is hardtack and water, not cans, utensils, can openers, pots and pans, and all that stuff. Okay, time wasters, tongue twisters, and alphagetti. Did you know that ARF is an aircraft rescue firefighting? I don't know how they get that, but that's what it is. TWE is Terrorist Early Warning Group. SPW is Shelter in Place. Is that Shelter in Place? SPW. EVE is evacuation, because we need to save syllables. We can't be saying evacuation. It's 5 syllables. We just say EVE. TOW is a 911 outage. So this phrase could be used on emergency frequencies. ARF is deployed. TWE is calling for SPW and EVE, but there's a TOW. And you can imagine how emergency responders would act. Avalanche hazard. Baltimore worked with the National Geographic Society to find out that there isn't an avalanche hazard in Baltimore because there are no mountains. So I would think you could have just done this and looked around and come to the same conclusion. Media badges are required in Waterloo. Now, being an ex-journalist and kind of a gadfly, I just call up Waterloo and I asked them if I could get a media badge just in case I needed. You know, so never heard back. So these things are written, they are not acted upon. There is color coding for convenience. And here's the punchline, that's on a black and white computer screen, but the color coding that you can't see is for your convenience in Cleveland. There are pages and pages of names of long-gone attendees, official, jargon, acronyms, definitions, etc., etc. Now, here's a special case of Long Beach, and I wonder if no one would admit to being a lawyer. How about mathematicians in the room? There we are. Okay, well, that's 1, and 1 times 1 would be 1, a total of 1, an average of 1, and that's the mean in the modality 1. Am I correct so far? Okay. The CPRI, the Calculated Priority Risk Index, is, I think it's a brace bracket 3 times 0.45, and it goes on and on and on. My supervising professor who did Oxford Engineering said they've buggered up the order of operations there, but I'm not qualified to judge that. But a tsunami ends up being 2.55. Now, 2.55 what, I don't know. I would understand percentages, I would understand probability, but it's just 2.55. 2.90 for windstorms, flooding is 2.45. They all seem to be similar enough to me, unless that's like the Richter scale, you know, algorithmic or something. And I wonder if Long Beach is any safer now that people know this, and whether those values are any different. Now, here's dangerous nonsense. I mean, nonsense is one thing, but here's dangerous nonsense. It is advised to take a windshield survey of disaster areas. That's get in a car, drive around, and look. And yes, drive over dead bodies, fallen trees, debris, you bet. Go rent an airplane to look over the aerial survey, especially if there's a storm going on. That would be dangerous too. People are advised, emergency responders are advised, to wade through rivers and creeks to survey the damage. Perhaps breaking ankles, perhaps drowning, perhaps getting hit by the water, who knows. Estimate the tonnage of cords of wood in downed trees. Now, first of all, anybody who's had the emergency credential of wedding planner knows that there are drones, and have been for 20 years, that you don't need a windshield survey. You don't need to rent an airplane. You don't need to walk up and down the disaster area. You just get a drone and go. Estimating tons of cords. Anybody chopped wood? You know, up at the cottage or somewhere? Well, I've chopped a lot of wood, and I happen to know a cord is 4 by 4 by 8, and a half a cord or a face cord is 4 by 2 by 8. But I couldn't possibly tell in a room this size, bunch of trees falling down, height of the ceiling. I don't know whether that's 1, 3, 5, 8 cords, and who cares? What are you going to do with that information? You want to get it off the road. You want to get it out of the front door of the hospital so people can get in. There is also the myth of expanded time. Anybody an old boxer? Martial artist? No? Okay, we need a more diverse group. You know, you always think, well, I'm going to throw a left and then a hook and then an uppercut, and I'm going to come back with left, now overhand. Yeah, but you've been punched in the face after you threw the first punch. You have this myth of expanded time that you will have time to do things, and that's what I see in the urban emergency plans. People's job description feature liaising with the political leadership, dealing with the media, planning a news conference, writing press releases, and so on. This is a week's worth of work for 3 people. And it's just a line, a throwaway line. Planning assumptions. One of the most dangerous that will actually kill people is that people will get out of the jurisdiction using their own motor vehicles. And guess what? 56% of urbanites do not own a car. That's the highest number. That happens to be New York City. Halifax has a large population. And then you put everybody on the roadway with 2-car families, and they're towing their trailer because they want to, get the trailer out of there. I mean, there's no hope that the roadways are going to handle the traffic. They can't handle the traffic in normal rush hour. People are billeting other people. Now, can you imagine this? Excuse me, ma'am, I just want you to stop your car here and roll down the window. There's this disheveled person here. He's fallen in some mud. Lost his wallet and his ID, but, he seems harmless. Could you put him in the back seat of your car and, drive him to the nearest motel or someplace? What could go wrong? I mean, have these people never seen a horror movie? Halifax calls for carpooling, encourage carpooling. And I forget this, Albuquerque, I think, has emergency responders knocking on your door. Would you please put up this person? We're not sure whether he got out of the mental hospital or the jail. We'll find out in due course. We'll come back in a week. Just put him up for a bit. In many cities, emergencies are categorized by severity, level 1, level 2, and level 3. It's important to remember that level 1, sometimes thought of as first, best, most, or superlative, is the lowest level of an emergency, with level 3 being the worst event. This is a bit counterintuitive because being first in the class is best or highest, and third is down the list a bit. But one can think of a higher number as higher severity too. Please keep that in mind. Except if you're in London, Ontario. They've decided that it's the other way around. Level 3 is no big deal, but look out if you're a level 1 emergency. Keep that in mind. Except if you're in Buffalo, where there are 2 levels of crisis, with 2 being the worst. Pittsburgh and Edmonton have worse crisis than anywhere, perhaps because they have 4 levels, with 4 being the worst. Indianapolis doesn't have levels, but it does have a KEMP, a comprehensive emergency plan, which has 4 parts. Columbus, Ohio, likes the number 3. They have a medallion or seal entitled Ready in 3. Austin, Texas, has 7 levels, with 1 being the worst, but again, 1 and 7 look much alike. Now, here's the following conversation from an emergency radio frequency. Pittsburgh calling. We're in the 4th stage of an emergency. Can anyone help? Sorry, there's no such thing. Buffalo here, do you mean you have twice the problems we have in a level 2? I mean, we're in a hell of a mess here in Pittsburgh. We're past a level 3 crisis. London here, you're not in a mess at all. In fact, level 4 is less than we even measure. Why are you monopolizing this emergency frequency to tell us you're just fine? Indianapolis here, do you mean you're recovering and want to celebrate? Columbus here, do you mean you took the 3 steps to prepare and are beyond that? Sounds good to us here. Pittsburgh here, forget it. Our emergency is over. That conversation, of course, is hypothetical because there's no interoperability on the emergency frequencies, so nobody could even have that gibberish conversation. They'd be alone having that gibberish conversation. Now, Barrie is a special case. I'm sure many of you remember the Barrie tornado. So the Barrie tornado should have caused people in Barrie to be a little more prudent in what they did. Page 45, item 6.11. Human Resources Development Canada says the local office can assist with paid workers and volunteers, the capability of employers in the affected areas to resume operations and other matters. I thought, now this is smart. What you're really going to need in many an emergency is a bunch of good old boys with pickup trucks and a chainsaw and maybe a winch, and they're going to clear the roads. It's going to be great. Barrie is really on it. So I call 1-800-O-Canada. They never heard of this. Try calling 1-800-O-Canada. I mean, it really is hysterical. They say, well, what program do you want? Well, I just want to know if HRDC has workers in Barrie. Well, is that a program or is it a policy or what ministry? You know, you have to know the answer to your own question before you can ask the question. However, as they say in Britain, I persevered. And I got the Deputy Minister's office in Hull, Quebec. No knowledge of this whatsoever. So I call up the local office in Toronto, which is, I think, 5,000 young, up at Shepherd. No knowledge of this whatsoever. I even showed them the plan. They had no knowledge of the plan. They said they would get back to me, get to the bottom of it, find out why it's in there. Because it's just made up. I've never heard from them again. Halifax, special case. Used to live in Shubenacadie, used to live in Black Point, lived to tell the tale. Motor vehicles are expected to be the primary mode of transport during an evacuation, as I mentioned. Drivers will be encouraged, as I mentioned here, to take people without cars. The media will react in accordance with pre-negotiated principles to accomplish the municipality's communication goals. Any news value gained from the communications will be purely incidental. So this is against CRTC rules, freedom of the press, case law, Broadcasting Act. It's just absolutely manufactured. They will pay compensation for the use of communications facilities. Imagine they're going to write out a check to the Rogers organization or the Shaw Cable Company or Bell Media. Say, oh, we need your radio station for a couple of days. How much do you want? Absolutely ridiculous. And they're going to have a continuous telecommunications link with all broadcast media. They don't say whether that's going to be coaxial cable, fiber, copper, broadband, two cans and a string. Nobody knows. It's just something to write on a piece of paper. And I then, of course, what I do is I call the numbers, all the emergency numbers. The number has been passed on to another employee and then another, and the person I reach knows nothing about what their role is in the emergency plan. Oh, I see more news coming. Kansas City will be the perfect place to wear the color red. The reason is their START program. This stands for Simple Triage and Rapid Treatment. Volunteers will be conducting triage at the scene of an urban emergency using a color-coded system. From the bottom up, green stands for a minor injury. Yellow means attention can be delayed. Red requires immediate attention. And black is for deceased. The word volunteers is used because in an emergency, as in war, everybody gets promoted one rank. It'll no doubt be someone's best intention to have trained medical personnel conducting triage, but they'll end up as trained medical personnel working in hospitals or working on actual sick people, not doing triage. A range of volunteers, medical students, yoga instructors, personal trainers, Reiki practitioners and such will be doing the triage. Now, will they know what a dead person looks like? Do you? It would be difficult for you or me to distinguish a dead person from someone in extreme shock or a coma or catatonia, which no longer exists, but I've seen in my journalism career catatonia. Not by the people watching my broadcasts. I don't mean that. I did a study in a hospital. You wouldn't want to bet your life that a well-meaning volunteer with no medical training in Kansas City can tell the difference between severe shock and death. So the safest thing to do in Kansas City is you wear red, signaling the need for immediate attention. In Houston, too, they have a triage guideline that you don't want to be part of. Black is also the category you don't want to be in. But in Houston, there are several levels of dead. cardiac arrest, obviously deceased, and severe multiple blunt trauma, non-survivable. That last category is probably more accurately termed almost dead, just to be precise. By deceased, Houston plan writers also mean non-urgent. Now, what an urgent death is like, I don't know, but they make that distinction. Now, speaking of the color black, as in the Black Death, San Francisco uses this color to signify the worst kind of emergency needing immediate attention. So if the city is in the category black, it's a clue to send all possible assistance. If a person in Houston or Kansas City is in the category black, that means don't give them any assistance at all. They're dead. So on second thought, just to avoid confusion, whatever city you're in, I think you should opt for wearing a sign that says, "I'm not dead." Really. Okay, more padding, more gibberish. A completed RPA will be transmitted to the FCO for an applicant. If the RPA is deemed by the FCO, the PAO will notify whomever. The SCG would act as an interface with DCLG, resistance advisors, and national government departments. The West Midlands Conurbation OFG has an agreed SCG process. The local NMDOH representative to EOC will also provide epidemiological and other public health emergency preparedness and response guidelines related to the incident if they know what this means. I remark at the incuriosity of emergency planners. I sent out a survey to 100. I read 8,000 pages of emergency plans, 100 English-speaking cities in the world. I got a 10% response. I just wanted to know simple things. For example, what fuel do you use in your transit system? Is it hydrogen? Is it gasoline? Is it diesel? Is it dual fuel? Is it electricity? Because if you run out of electricity, or if there's a power outage and you don't have alternative fuel, then you're in bad luck. They didn't know, didn't care. Now, I used to work in city government, and if I had called up the TTC and said, how many of your vehicles use gas or diesel, they would have told me. But the people I surveyed didn't want to know. Where do you go in evacuations? I mean, these are things you don't know. Where do we go? Do we go up to Yorkdale and shop or park or what? Is there going to be gasoline up there to fill up? Or what do we do? And very few return phone calls. I asked a series of pretty obvious questions, and I got gibberish. This is like a marital dispute, you know. Do you receive any calls for help asking how to get more prepared? The answer was, we exercise our emergency plan on a regular basis. Now, Waterloo's director of EMS. Now, here's where leadership comes in. I think many of you from business will know a job description has to be a contract. It has to be very specific deliverables and consequences of not delivering them, no ambiguity. Well, here's the Waterloo's director of emergency medical services is supposed to coordinate with police, fire, and other agencies, liaise with the Commissioner of Public Health Hospitals, and assist the emergency site manager, but only when required. That could mean never. Participating in the post-emergency debriefing and assisting in the preparation of report. This means that the medical officer of health here, or the EMS head, could walk around with a clipboard saying, everything okay with you? How you doing? Have a nice day. And they have fulfilled their role. I think this is criminal. And it will kill people. All right. There are some good pieces of advice. What is the shelf life of food? What are the hidden water sources in your home? In the ice tray, for example. Have spray paint to be able to put a message on your door. The contents of go bags and car kits. Some good advice. And experimenting with bed shakers and strobe lights for people with mobility and other challenges. LED signs on power company. You know, Toronto Hydro uses, are you ready? Sit down. For those of you who aren't sitting down, please sit down. Toronto Hydro uses Twitter to tell people there's a power outage. And the average cell phone will last, 6-8 hours. Many young people leave them on all night, so you may only have a couple of hours, and you're being told, it's almost like the teacher, for those who aren't here, could you please raise your hand? And I've mocked them for that, and they said, well, that's how people like to be communicated with. I said, what about LED signs? Done in other jurisdictions. What about lawn signs? What about door hangers? You need to communicate with everybody, not just people with Twitter. And I raised the issue of the the mass shooting in Nova Scotia, where an RCMP employee thought that you notify people on Twitter. And, you know, maybe 80% of the population that has Twitter, and they're not looking at it all the time. And that did kill people. Okay. Remember the cords of wood, estimating the cords of wood? Kansas City says, we want a 70-hour push. We want to get the roads clear. We don't care where you plow it, what you do. Just like in Montreal when I was a kid. If they couldn't pick up the snow, they said, we're going to blow the snow onto your lawn. Tough luck. Clear the roads was the goal. Fort Worth and Dallas have outdoor sirens. There are outdoor warning speakers in some places. And Boston may be shifting the hours of work to deal with global warming. So if you're working from 6 to 2, you're not out working at 3 o'clock in the afternoon when it's the hottest. Now, you know that phrase, if you see something, say something? Doesn't tell you what you're looking for. It doesn't tell you who to say it to. But, you know, it's a start. I saw something with the TTC in December. I reported it. I have just received a response now. So obviously, I've said to the TTC, there's no point in having this campaign if you're not going to, you know, react to it. Well, here are some useful pieces of information from Leeds in the UK. This is what a terrorist bomb looks like. Terrorists don't want the package coming back to them, so they put extra postage on it. It might be leaking oil or something. It's probably written by someone whose first language isn't English. That's what you're looking for. I think this is in Albuquerque. That's what a hailstone looks like. If you are told to be careful, there might be a hail storm, and you think of hail as a little wee tiny thing like that, and you take an umbrella, you're going to get conked on the head. Good to show pictures of that. They test regularly in Japan. There's a Portland's Kids Museum, gets them used to earthquakes. There are mobile earthquake simulators in Japan. There's a lot of stuff that happens around the world that we don't take any advantage of. Australia is a special case. Stay and defend in brush fires or evacuate. They've been going back and forth on this public policy for 100 years. And a royal commission on a fire said, we are asking citizens, Joe citizen, to go into fires that we wouldn't send our most experienced firefighters to go to. You know, you got a garden hose and you're fighting this fire. Okay, more good news. Water absorbing asphalt. We don't have to have floods. There's a type of asphalt that will absorb water. You don't need insurance in basements, and you could ban soft furniture in basements. We don't have to have all the losses that we have. So these are some ideas that stiffen up your homes. Many homes, wood frame homes, are not bolted to the foundation. You can do that retroactively. You can put bolt bookshelves to the ground in earthquake areas. Low-hanging fruit. There are 2,000 unsafe dams in North America. 20% were completed in the 18th century. 40 years is the average life. 1,500 are 1 mile downstream from a major city. Probably take 5 seconds for the water column to get down there. They could be fixed. This is really a horrible danger that is just sitting there waiting to happen. Contraflow, where all cars go out the same way, it's been termed a fantasy by urban planners. Roadways aren't made to be able to reverse quickly, on-ramps and off-ramps and so on. There will be no services on evacuation routes. Gasoline stations run on power, and if there's a power failure, you've got no gas. New Orleans says disabled vehicles and debris will be removed from highways. No indication of how. Okay, this is the last little diatribe before questions. What shape is your emergency plan in? This is from the Toronto plan, and I might challenge anyone to say, what is risk? What is probability times impact? Well, if the probability is losing the roof of your home in a windstorm and the impact is you're homeless, how do you multiply no roof times homeless? What do you get? I don't know. So I find this diagram a little less than helpful. Now, we all know organizational charts. You know, the boss is at the top, and maybe there's a board of directors above that, and there are vice presidents, and there are directors, and what have you. Well, somebody's tried to do that with urban emergency plans. Here is one, probably American, because it's got the mayor and city council up at the top, and all kinds of people down here, and that's how they're going to manage their crisis. Here's one where the CAO of the city is up at the top, and there's his designate or her designate, and on down come these plans, but I don't see the level of detail from the other one. Now, here's the incident is in charge. That's the top of the organizational chart now, the incident. And then the emergency services are deployed. It's more like a flow chart, I guess. And then the fire chief and so on, they get involved, and there's activation, and on it goes. Here is now the incident again, is at the top of the org chart, and this is more elaborate than others. But you can see, unlike Human Resources Department organizational chart, there's no standardization here. Now, here's a donut. Where you have the location of the dangerous event, and then you have a command post up at the top, and you have people coming back and forth, portable restrooms, a feeding area, etc. But the donut is the way they want to handle things. Here is, this is pretty complex here, where you've got the mayor and council and the emergency management committee co-managing. That always tells me nobody's managing, but we have co-managers of the plan and lots of people down the chain of command here. Now we have an elliptical thing where you get feedback and improve and go back and so on. And then here we have the KEMP, the emergency management. This looks like a furnace or something, or a monster. And we have field guides reporting to the KEMP, and KEMP reporting to the field guides, it seems to me. At a glance, I submit these are not very clear. And then here we have Calgary with their hoodoos and voodoos and things. And here is business interruption. Now, one of the phrases that is a little more modern than that is business continuation. You don't want interruption, but they concede interruption there. Here's one that is horizontal, and here is the IPAWS, and I've made this speech to emergency responders, and I've said, anybody know what IPAWS is? Nobody does. Somebody Googled it. You can Google and find out. But here we have all this back and forth here. And in Jacksonville, they have the P. You go rising up the P as you manage the process. And can you imagine the emergency response? Look, we're up at the top of the P here. Can you give us a hand? And here is a sort of a geodesic dome. And again, the level of detail, I think, is a bit much. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your attention. For those who were listening, I don't mean to be presumptuous. Thank you. For those who weren't, I forgive you. Cheers.
It's a pleasure. Thank you very much for an entertaining, informative, and what's lacking in this day and age, common sense talk. Thank you very much.
Pleasure.